Those of you who are already familiar with my work, which I think is most of you here, you know that you can usually expect to see a bird or two in my work. My interest in birds goes back to my very early childhood. I was fortunate in that I was able to spend a lot of time at my grandparents' house just over here across Government Street on South 20th. And my grandfather was a retired LSU botany professor. And one of his hobbies of his retirement was feeding the birds in his backyard. And he even went so far, he built his own feeders. Sometimes he would grow sunflower seeds for the cardinals and so forth. And so we would sit in the back room together when I was little and we would watch the birds. But because he was a scientist, we didn't just watch the birds, we observed the birds. And we looked up and we identified the species and we found out about their habits and which birds were there all year round and what they ate and which birds migrated and what time of year they come. So it's really no surprise that as I began to develop as an artist, these birds would start to appear in my work. I found them, besides interesting just in themselves and their behavior, the aesthetic qualities of their form, their colors, their textures and patterns and so forth were just such wonderful design elements that I liked incorporating that in my work. And again, as I continued to develop, I became interested in them more on a metaphorical level, what they symbolize. In just about every culture and religion on earth, the birds is a symbol of the human spirit or the human soul. And we also use birds symbolically as messengers bringing us messages from the spirit world or the world beyond this one. And so that interested me too in my work. My interest or my fascination with white egrets in particular began when I used to commute to LSU, both as a student and later as an employee, by bicycle. And my route would take me by the LSU lakes, which is just a really rich habitat for waterfowl. And the most numerous and the most eye-catching of all those birds were the white egrets, and I just fell in love with them, especially my early morning bike rides, watching them fish, watching them fly, their graceful, elegant forms, and that incredible pure whiteness of their plumage, which I never understood how they kept their feathers so clean in that murky water. And so the egret has become almost a personal symbol for me, and he keeps cropping up periodically in my work. Now these particular drawings and this particular egret was one that happened to fly into my front yard. At the same time, I just happened to be looking out the window, and this is something that had never happened before. And we kind of sat there and looked at each other sagely for a while, and he came at a time when I really needed him to come, because he brought with him very much a sense of peace and serenity when I needed it. And so when I next got back into my studio, I wanted to honor him, and so that's where these drawings came from. And again, those of you who are familiar with my work will notice that these drawings have a lot less in them than my drawings usually tend to. I tend to really crowd the picture plane with all kinds of plants and animals and birds, just kind of a lush, teeming with life sort of composition. But in these, I wanted to try and retain that sense of calmness that I felt when that egret came. Actually, my original intention with these was that there was only going to be the white egret against the blue sky, but by the time I got to the second drawing, vegetation started to creep in. I just can't help it.
How did you like working with the limited palette compared to what you usually do?
I've always loved doing the white birds. It's really almost a whole different technique for me. It's a different feel with the pen. When I started visualizing these, I really didn't think about it, but I was visualizing this long horizontal. And as I got into it, I thought, why on earth did I choose this? It has nothing to do with the shape of the bird. And it was really kind of a compositional puzzle. How am I going to balance this with it being so different? And all I can think of why that shape came to mind was because I was looking through the Venetian blinds in the window, which is a long horizontal shape, and maybe that's where that came from.
So when you said when you were visualizing it, you just did them kind of from memory of that egret as opposed to people who use photographs? And
Right. I use reference photographs, but just to kind of get, you know, certain positions and things like that. But yeah, it's mostly memory with this one, that bird.
wow.
Are there any other birds that in particular you could see yourself doing another series like this with?
I don't know if there's any one bird that I would do like that again. The egret is so special to me. Now I've done like series where I've done all white birds, but they've been the egret, the white pelican, the white swan, and so forth. And so I have always loved doing white because there's so many subtle colors and variations of tints in that white, and kind of feeling those out. I really enjoy that. It's almost more of a meditation than other colors.
Did that chameleon make it?
No.
Okay.
You know, the egret and I were looking at each other, as I say, and I was having this transcendent moment. And then he turned and stalked off and went and ate the lizard. Which, you know, life goes on.
Well, that's part of the process. Yeah. It's
Nature's not
wonderful.
always kind.
No. And that's one of the things you always say.